Aussie travellers will soon have more rights when flying under a proposed charter announced by the federal government. Airlines will need to process refunds faster, treat customers better and help passengers rebook flights when delayed for more than 3 hours under the proposal. The penalties for airlines in breach of the charter are still being worked out, with public submissions on the draft now open. For their take, let's bring in Sunrise Showbiz editor Peter Ford from Melbourne and Seven Finance editor Gemma Acton here in Sydney. Good morning to you both. Pete, this feels like common sense for so many travellers who've gone through so many ups and downs over the last few years. So does this charter go far enough, in your opinion?
Well, it's never going to go far enough if you're the person stuck at the airport and you can't get home for Christmas Day or you can't get to a funeral. So you're always going to be angry. And the days of really being able to just fly in somewhere on the day of something have gone. You really need to go the day before just to be safe. But in principle, I like all this. I'm sure Jenna will confirm a lot of this stuff is actually already in place, but they just don't see it through. But I like the idea that people are going to be compensated. But most of all, you want information. You want to know how long you are going to be stuck at the airport, and I'm not sure that any legislation is going to be able to provide people with the information they need to have.
And that the airlines need to deal with it in a timely fashion in terms of rebooking you, giving you a refund, paying for your accommodation, meals. Jem, from a finance perspective, from a consumer perspective, what do you think about these new rules?
I think it's about time too. In any other place where something's sold, you wouldn't get something you didn't pay for. Imagine if you walked into a shop, you saw a dress advertised, you bought it, you get home, it turns out to be a pair of trousers. You're like, this doesn't actually work for me. And like, sorry, have a voucher instead, or you spend 8 hours waiting on the phone. It just wouldn't happen. Airlines have been able to get away with an extraordinary amount for decades, and it's become really closely to our attention after COVID, because we cut them a lot of slack during COVID because they did have a tough time at the start. But then they really took advantage of our goodwill, and we saw what happened with the results of that. And now, as Pete says, you just cannot trust. You just don't know when you're going to arrive somewhere. You're so tentative about making plans, and we shouldn't live like this. This is a major expense. It's a major part of our time, a major part of our planning. So not a day too soon that some strict rules are coming in.
Yeah, and simple things like if you're stuck on the plane for an hour or more, you actually get a snack and they have to let you use the loo, which is common decency. Moving on, we love this. A mum has sparked heated debate on social media for revealing that she charges her family $50 each for Christmas lunch. The woman's having 10 people stay at her home over 3 days. I mean, it's a long time, and spent nearly $500 in total for food. She says the family's happy to contribute, but some commentators labelled her weird. Others say she's tight. Pete, what do you reckon? Pay a fee for Christmas lunch if you're going to someone else's place?
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't charge people, but I actually don't mind it. It's kind of more practical than people just turning up with something in their hand that you don't really want or you don't need it for that day. And as you mentioned there, this is actually covering 3 days because the guests are arriving Christmas Eve, they're leaving Boxing Day. So that's a lot of food. And putting on Christmas lunch, it does add up. All the little bits and pieces really adds up to quite an expensive event. So if that's the practical way of covering her costs, I think it's fine. But yeah, I wouldn't be announcing it. It does read badly.
There's all the discrepancy, isn't it, between someone who chips in and pays for the ham, you know, which is a big expense, and then someone who might just bring the chocolates, you know,
or
like
the bonbons,
or the bonbons, you know, some of the decorations, or just the bottle of champagne. What do you think about this, Gemma? It kind of makes sense, particularly if you're having everyone to your house and feeding them for 3 days.
I think it's great, and not just from the host's point of view. I think when you're a guest, especially for 3 days, you always kind of feel like you're treading on someone's toes and you're being a little bit annoying, particularly if you bring 2 small kids along with you. But we stay at our parents' every Christmas, and we're extremely close, but still I feel a little bit in their way, and I'm sure they would never ask me to money to contribute, but I would actually quite like to, you know. I bring things, obviously, but I would actually feel a bit better if I knew I was contributing a bit more to the overall picture. I think it's a great idea.
The also thing that it avoids is did this happen in your family, Pete, where a month leading up to Christmas, there's a discussion about who's bringing what salad, who's bringing what dessert,
the menus,
what glaze you're having on the ham. I mean, that is nauseating.
Well, my family consists of 3 dogs, so the lead up to Christmas is a little bit different. We have to get stocked up. But yeah, that discussion about who's going to bring what, it doesn't really equate. And look at restaurants. I mean, it's very hard to find a restaurant that is charging anything under about $150 on Christmas Day for lunch. So if you're getting 3 days worth of mum's cooking, you're doing pretty well for $50.
I know that no one is more demanding.
The labour that goes into a Christmas meal as well. She hasn't charged anything asking for that at all.
Those dogs of yours, they are demanding, Pete, so we know that's a burden at Christmas. Finally, the Christmas spirit with an Aussie twist happening again this year, as it does every year, with many locals leaving out a six-pack of beer for the Garbo as a festive gift. But while the tradition is starting to die out, many Garbos say it does still happen, even revealing they're not technically allowed to actually have alcohol in the truck. Gemma, is this a tradition that you do in your family, leaving something out for the garbage man?
I'm really embarrassed to say I never knew about this tradition until today, and I did a quick whip around of people I've seen this morning, which isn't a whole heap, admittedly, because it's very early, but nobody I spoke to knew about it either. That said, I'm really glad I know about it now, because I haven't missed bin day this week yet. I think it's a lovely thing. I think anybody in your life, if you can and you really appreciate the work they do, it's a good thing to remember.
Our bin day is actually on Wednesday, so on Christmas Day. I'm not sure if they're going to collect it or not, but I feel like this year I definitely should do this. Pete, what about you in your neighbourhood?
Well, I wasn't aware of it. I leave carrots out, of course, for Father Christmas and the reindeers, but leaving something out for the Garbos is something that I've not been doing. And frankly, I'd be surprised how much actually would get to the Garbos. If you leave a six-pack out on top of the rubbish bin overnight, I think the odds of it actually being there when the Garbo arrives are kind of remote, but it's a lovely idea if you think you can do it. Better off just to get up and say hello to him. And actually, normally they arrive at 5:30 in the morning, so that's a bit problematic, but I think that's far more personal.
Well, if you have a toddler in your house, you're out there to wave to the garbage person anyway, because that's just such a highlight of the week when the garbage man comes. Thank you so much, Pete and Gemma. From a straw poll of 3, no one does it. So if you're at home, you do it. Please do let us know.